Well, good evening. Great to have you with us as ever on a Wednesday night to talk all things rugby league here on The Last Tackle, and alongside me this week, Adrian Morley. We've reached that point of the season, one round left in the Betfred Super League before we take a break to head down to Wembley. So I thought we'd take the opportunity to do a little bit of a half-term report on the league, Miles, and we'll go through it team by team, pick out the good and the bad, and see what we've got left at the end of it. But before we go into each club in any detail, what's your kind of general impressions of the Betfred Super League 2025 been?
Very, very impressive. I'm amazed year on year. These boys never fail to produce some quality rugby league, and it's been that's been the case this year. The usual suspects are up there: Hull KR, Wigan. Obviously my hometown, Salford, it's been a bit of a disaster there at the club. But all in all, I think there's been some terrific games, and they're still only halfway, and very exciting what's going to happen and what could potentially happen, and can't wait.
Interesting time of year, of course. The league's starting to kind of make a little bit more sense on the table, starting to take shape. Big day in a couple of weeks, of course, at Wembley, and I think this year as well, that added dynamic of playing for England shirts as well for a lot of the players is just something different as well, and just a little bit of extra motivation, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's always an honour representing your country. However, to represent your country against the best team in the world in Australia, the old enemy on home soil, it doesn't get much bigger. You could argue a World Cup is, but I think an Ashes series is even bigger than a World Cup, to be fair. So that's the incentive, the goal for them boys, and you can see there's a few of the old heads are putting themselves in the shot window, but there's been a few players holding their hand up, and hopefully Sean Wayne's going to have a look, and they can stake their claim.
Well, we're going to go through the class of 2025. We'll go alphabetically as well, as not to upset anyone. We'll start off then with the Castleford Tigers, 10th in the league, 3 wins. Difficult start to life for Danny Maguire as a head coach. What have you made of what's been going on at the Jungle?
Well, I think if you look at the size of the squad and the quality of the squad, I think you'll say 3 wins is probably about where they deserve to be, really. I know Danny's a young coach. I've been down watching Danny. He's a great coach, actually, but when you've not got the personnel, it's really is a tough gig there. But I think they're going out of the business. They have improved. They made a couple of signings. I think they'll keep improving, but whether they'll challenge for one of the playoff spots, I don't think so.
Hey, you've mentioned that they have improved. Some green shoots of recovery in recent weeks. That win against Salford, albeit beleaguered Salford, the potential of what's there. Texoy hat-trick on that day. I think he's generally been pretty impressive this year. Reason for optimism from a Cas perspective as well. New investment, new ownership coming in for them. Does it feel like this is a building year, that Danny Maguire needs to get this 12 months as a head coach under his belt as much as anything? Yeah,
I think so. I think it'll be great for Danny to have the experience of coaching, being the head coach in Super League. But you're right, there's been investment, there's work's being done as we speak on the ground. If they can replicate what Wakefield have done a couple of miles down the road, they've got a fantastic new stadium there, and we'll talk about Wakefield in a bit, but I think it's great what they've done. But Castleford certainly have the potential to improve the squad, to improve the stadium, and just improve the club.
Moving on to Catalans, and what a mixed bag this is. First coaching casualty of the year, we think. I still don't think there's been any formal announcement from the club, but Steve McNamara has gone. An ordinary start to the league season, got to the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup, and they crashed out against Hull KR. And I think ultimately the club had been on an upward trajectory. It's hit a kind of period of regression, perhaps, and some big name recruits in there. When they're not performing, that doesn't help either, does it?
Yeah. I've already praised Steve McNamara. I think he's a terrific coach. Having worked under Steve, he's fantastic. However, it is a results-driven sport, and the powers that be in Catalans have seen it fit to let Steve go. Disappointing for Steve, but I mean, it is a fantastic club. There's some quality youth there, so I still think they can be a force in Super League, but probably not this year. I don't know whether they have signed some big name signings, but you're right. I don't know whether the recruitment was as good as it could be, or the players weren't right for that particular setup. For one reason or another, they're not performing, and we've seen the coach go, and it was a really big defeat last week as well, at home as well, which is you normally see a bit of a reaction from the players. There was a reaction, but a very, very negative one. It was as poor a performance as I've seen Catalans for years and years.
Up until that point, home form had been reasonable for the Dragons. There'll always be a couple of things. There'll always be a difficult place to go because of the travel and the environment, and just a slightly different thing to what people are used to. But also, they're always an attractive proposition, I think, for signing players because of the lifestyle and the weather and just something a little bit different. So it isn't difficult to see. If they get the right coaching, it's not difficult to see a route back for them towards the top four and above, is it?
No, 100%. We get the right coaching. Who can work with them players, get them players a bit more confident, a bit more firing, and you're right. It's a really tough place to go. Is Catalans Dragons. So it's not the season's not over by any stretch, but they do need to improve quite quickly, really. So it'll be interesting to see if they appoint a new coach sooner, or they just announce one for next year. But it is a funny situation, as you've mentioned, that they've still not announced that Steve McNamara has. We know he's left, but they've not announced a great deal, really. So I think from a club perspective, they need to be a bit more show a bit of front and just let us know what's going on, really.
Off the top of my head, two kind of mid-season appointments that stick out as being really successful. Rowan Smith at Leeds a couple of years ago, taking them all the way to the grand final, and then we saw the impact that Justin Holbrook had mid-season when he came in at St Helens. The attitude at Catalans has got to be that if they can get that appointment right quickly, there's still something to be got out of this year.
Yeah, you've said before, we're not even halfway through the season yet. Quality squad they've got there at Catalans, really hard place to go and get any results. So if they can get someone in sooner rather than later and flick the switch and get them boys firing, there's no reason why they can't climb the ladder and really make a bit of an impact on the playoffs.
We'll move on to Huddersfield Giants. It's difficult to know where to begin with them. 11th in the table, a solitary win which came at Magic Weekend. Luke Robinson, you've got a feel for him. I don't know what he was doing in pre-season, smashing mirrors, but the injury record from not even day one of this season, from before the season even started, they've been up against it, almost a non-starter for that reason alone.
Yeah, a lot of results are down to the coach. The coach holds his hand up and says it's my responsibility. Sometimes it is out of your hands when you've got an injury list, as long as Robbo has there at the Huddersfield Giants. So it's just one of the things. He's got the worst luck anyway. However, there is a few of the boys, they're getting a few bodies back at the moment. There was a big improvement on the performance week before last, but then they got a bit of a hiding against St Helens, so it's not as great as a comeback as it could have been. But the more of the injured boys they get back, the better they'll be, the more competitive they'll be. But it's been really tough for Luke. Because
when he can get all of his troops on the field, there's undeniably some talent in there. I mean, their problem's probably summed up by signing Leigh Leopards and then him picking up a serious foot injury half an hour into his debut. Yeah, I think he broke his foot, did he? That's just been the luck of the Huddersfield Giants and Luke Robinson this year. But again, if they do get the boys back, I can't see them making a play for the playoffs. But what it could do is give them a bit more competitiveness for the end of the year, and then they build on for next year. Then, so it's been terrible. One win to the name, and they're only above Salford on goal difference, aren't they? So if you don't want to have the wooden spoon tagged here, so they'll be hoping for at least another win, just to put a bit of a gap between themselves and Salford. Moving up towards the west side of Hull FC, sat in the table at 7th. They hit a little bit of a dip a couple of weeks ago, picked it up with a good win against Leigh at the weekend. 6 wins across the league, have already beaten what they did last year, which was obviously a horror show for them. They are Super League's big improvers. I don't think anyone's getting carried away and talking about them being challengers just yet, but John Cartwright has undoubtedly got them moving in the right direction.
Yeah, without a doubt, he's been fantastic, John Cartwright. You're right, the last month or so, they've had a blip. They was absolutely flying. I think they were second in the table. But yeah, a couple of losses. They are back to winning ways now, but if you compare the side from last year, you know, the most improved team in Super League.
You know John Cartwright. What will he have gone in and set straight away, and standards he'd have set? What will he have changed to just get things going in the right direction?
Well, you know, I worked with him 20 years ago, but he's a very strict taskmaster. You know, he doesn't take any nonsense, and he is old school. But you know, players need that, and you know, he works really well with the forwards, and you can just tell in the performances they've had a bit more grit about him and a bit more steel, and that comes down from Carty, and really pleased for him. And when I spoke to him last, he's really enjoying the experience and his time in the UK. And you know, it's important that we have strong Hull teams, and you know, they're going about the business really well.
When I looked at Hull FC's recruitment coming into this season, I thought John Cartwright's kind of big step was to bring a lot of experience in. Zach Hardacre, John Asiata, Jordan Rapana are all coming in more to list as well. But actually, the real bright thing for them has been some of the young talents that has come through. I mean, Harvey Barron, Lewis Martin, the two wingers. Will Price has obviously come into the side as well. He feels like he's been around for a long time, but he's still very young. There's a real nucleus of a squad to build on as well.
Yeah, without a doubt, and we know how much of a hotbed rugby league is for these youngsters. It's probably the only city in the UK where rugby league is the main sport. So they're getting these great youngsters coming through, you know, with a bit of experience leading the way. There's no reason why they can't be challenging, but this was certainly a year where they just steadied themselves, and I think next year they will be actually challenging. So they'll get a lot of confidence from this year, and then I think next year we'll see Hull FC right up there.
7th in the table at the moment. If they can keep themselves into around that top 6, I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to go all the way, but how valuable would a playoff run be this year in terms of what you've just said about improvement into next season?
No, if you look at the team, you know, there's relegation battle last year, and if they can make the top 6, that will be an achievement. I can't see them doing anything other than making the top 6. I don't think they'll be challenging for Old Trafford, but you're right, if they make a couple of decent signings and the confidence that will give them for next year, I think it'll be fantastic for the club.
Moving across the city, Hull KR are the standout club of the year, almost perfect in 2025. One defeat, Wembley of course, in a couple of weeks. I think there were naturally questions raised about whether they could repeat what they did last season, if they were going to be contenders at that top level again. They've answered all of those questions and more. At the point of having this conversation, it's very, very difficult to see them not being at Old Trafford again.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, they've made 2 major finals, and well, 3 if you include the Challenge Cup week on Saturday. So Challenge Cup finalists 2 years ago, grand finalists last year, and you're right, sometimes clubs, when they have a bit of success, they do stutter the following year, but they've improved if that's at all possible. So just 1 loss this year in the Super League, and they're sitting pretty top of the Super League in the Challenge Cup final. So you know, there's no reason why they can't go all the way to the grand final, but I think it'll be a huge game in that Challenge Cup final. If they can get a win, that will give them confidence then to obviously the fact that they know in these major finals they can not just make the numbers up, not just be the bridesmaids, and actually get their hands on some silverware. I think that could be fantastic for the club.
We'll talk about how good they've been in defence. 112 points conceded across Super League all season. When you kind of have conversations about that, you'd be forgiven for thinking, you know, they almost sound like they're an attritional team and they just get the job done and they're quite low scoring. But actually, they're as good with the ball as well. And Willie Peters, the job that he's done, the way that he's put that team together, he must be, you know, one of the best kind of young coaches we've seen come through in a long time.
Definitely. Yeah, his record speaks for itself. He's done fantastically well. The team's done great. Mikey Lewis, I think, is the best talent in Super League. Is the reigning Man of Steel. And again, when you win Man of Steel, sometimes you can falter a little bit. But he's been absolutely outstanding this year. And still a lot of rugby league to play. And they're sitting on top of the pile, so they'll be happy where they are, but you know, job's not done till you get your hands on some silverware. So I think that'll be the next goal.
And that, I think, will be interesting in 10 days' time when we step out at Wembley, because losers there in 2023. Okay, they went into that grand final last year against an all-conquering Wigan side as underdogs, but it does feel Hull KR, they're on the verge of, you know, winning something. They're on the verge of being right up there as a top side that we're going to see at the top for a long time. But the more finals they lose, the more of these big games they lose, the pressure's just going to go up and up and up, isn't it? It feels like an important one to win in 10 days. Yeah,
no, you're 100% right. But I think the fact that they played in a Challenge Cup final, first one in a long time, you could argue the boys weren't prepared, you know, the rabbit in the headlights, that kind of thing. Same thing with the grand final, but the majority of the boys who are playing this year as well, so they've had that experience, so there's no excuses now. So I think they'll be much better coming into this Challenge Cup final than there was a couple of years ago. But you know, you forget there was just within a whisker of actually winning that Challenge Cup final. So
and they were right in that grand final as well.
They were, yeah. So I don't think the burden of really faltering in finals is it's a bit unfair of a tag that, but I think they do need to get their hands on some silverware rather than just making the finals.
Moving onto one of your former clubs, Leeds Rhinos, we were just saying off air actually, they've crept into contention, haven't they? I feel like they've gone quite under the radar. I still don't feel like loads of people are talking about them, but quietly they've gone about their business. They're up into third, and you know they look good value for it.
They do, and you know, last year we spoke about how inconsistent they were. One week they'd be good, and they'd be terrible for 3 or 4 weeks. But this year they seem to have sorted out that consistency, and they are putting themselves in positions to win these games, and games that they were potentially losing last year by short margins, they're actually winning this year. So you know, they're sitting third in Super League, and you know, I think the club will be delighted where they have been the last couple of years. They will be delighted, and I think the coach, you know, needs to give him a big pat on the back. I think he's done fantastically well.
Loads of speculation about Brad Arthur, where he may or may not be next season, but this year he's had an unsettled side as well due to injuries. I mean, losing Mike Acevo in pre-season before the ball had been kicked in anger, they've had a lot of kind of shifting around in the spine because of injuries, but perhaps the difference has been this year the signing of Jake Connor. I know a lot of eyebrows were raised when that was announced, but he looks like he's getting somewhere back to his best at Leeds, and he's been that kind of almost Swiss Army knife, hasn't he, for them, that they've needed to just see them through when players have been on the sideline. Yeah,
you're right. You know, Brad Arthur is a very, very experienced coach. He's seen it all in his time in rugby league. So injuries are unfortunately a part of our sport, and it's how you react and how you adapt to the injuries. But I think. You know, when Wembley comes round and the boys get a week off, I think he'll sit back and have a look at the table and be quite happy how the Rhinos are going.
Yeah, third at the moment. I feel like this next run of games for Leeds is going to be a real crucial little run of the season. Wakefield, Warrington, St Helens, Leigh, Hull KR. So, you know, they're playing 5 clubs in a row who all want to be in that top 6, all have genuine credentials to be in that top 6. Obviously, Hull KR top of the table as well. Wakefield proving to be a very, very tricky addition to the league. So if they can, they'll probably feel like if they can come through that little run of games relatively unscathed, they're going to be right in this. Yeah,
definitely. And it's a mouth-watering clash next week. Wakefield, who are one of the form teams, going to Headingley. It was always great games to play, and them little Yorkshire derbies were always fantastic to play in. But you're right. You know, if you take the 3-4 teams from the bottom who are probably a little bit off the pace regarding the rest of the teams. Put anyone against anyone, it's really, really tough to pick a winner in this year's Super League. And so if Leeds come up against teams in and around their spot, and they do get a fortunate, or not fortunate, do get a favourable result, there's no reason why they can't be challenging for even higher than third.
Heading back to Lancashire, or Greater Manchester as it is these days, Leigh Leopards. A lot of questions about them coming into this season. They lost a lot of players. They lost a lot of last season's salary cap to various places, and there was a talk of, if it was the end of a kind of cycle for them, how was Adrian Lamb going to manage that rebuild? Well, they've done superbly well, considering up in fourth position, 7 wins so far this season, and there's nothing to suggest that they won't be in playoff semi-finals beyond at the end of this year.
Yeah, you're right. I think it shows just what a great coach Adrian Lamb is. You just mentioned the turnover of players. That will have a huge effect on any club, any team, any coach. But they've done great. My favourite game of the year was the very first game, Wigan against Leigh. Just a football score. It was 1-0 to Leigh, but it was absolutely compelling. I loved it, but they've just kept winning. And they got to the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup, what you mentioned before. But I think they're going out of the business very well. They're going to be tough to beat. I was disappointed with them last week, though. I thought they threw the towel in a little bit. But it was a good, strong performance from Hull. But it was a bit disappointing from the Leopards.
Yeah, they've got a little bit of work to do, haven't they? Obviously losing that semi-final, beaten by Wigan, and then that defeat in the weekend. Adrian Lamb want to make sure that they just kind of arrest that run and make sure that things don't get too out of hand. But some of their recruitment, I think, has been very good. David Armstrong has been a lot of fun to watch. Obviously very quick, good player with ball in hand. I think Tessie New's been a really good addition. But actually, perhaps the most important thing they've done is keep hold of Edwin Apape, who, for me, is the best 9 in the competition.
Yeah.
And just doesn't seem to go away. We used to talk about James Roby being an 8 out of 10 every week. I feel like Edwin Apape, although a completely different player, is in that category in terms of consistency. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I do the voting on the Man of Steel, and I got asked to do Leigh and Hull last week. Obviously, Hull got the win, but he was second in my votes. He's always up there, just his consistency. But you wouldn't like to run at him with the ball in your hand. But I totally agree with you. And Leigh have got the Giants next week, and the way the Giants are going, the way Leigh are going, you'd think Leigh would be okay to say, we'll hopefully get back to winning ways, and they get the week off. So I think Leigh will, again, when it comes to the break, I think Leigh will be happy with where they are in Super League and how the season's gone.
On to the problem child of the league, Moss. 2 Salford fans sat in the room. One day we might sit here and talk about how good things are at the club again and go back to where we were 12 months ago, talking about a really joyous team to watch and support. We're not there at the moment. There's not a huge amount that can be said that we've not already spoken about over the kind of weeks and months gone. I think the one thing I want to stress with Salford is that none of this can be put at the door of the coaching staff or the players or the backroom staff who, in horrendous circumstances, have just got on with it and done their best. Yeah,
exactly. It's just a terrible situation, and you've got to take your hat off to the coaching staff, to Paul Brierley and his men, and all the players who were actually left there. There's been a number of players leave, but yeah, it's just been it's saddened me, it really has. For the team, I'm a Salford lad, Salford fan, and to see the team who've competed so well the last couple of years, to see them in this situation is really, really tough to see. They've had one win this year, earlier on in the year against Huddersfield, but you've got to say that the way the team is now, I can't see them getting another win, and we don't know what the future holds for Salford, but it is very sad.
It feels like, we know that the clock is ticking. This can't go on much longer. When you look at it, almost feels, you've kind of touched it there, it almost feels more tragic, doesn't it, when you look at where we were 12 months ago and where the club was going and what Paul Brierley had put together and what that group, because it wasn't just the results, there were arguably the most entertaining team in the league, and I felt like the club was at the beginning of a new generation of supporters who were going to buy into that, and it would then, evolve into something new. It feels like we're so far away from that now.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the end of last year and that home tie against Leigh in the playoffs, there was over 10,000 there at the AJ Bell. They've never had that bigger an attendance before. They didn't quite get the win in the game, but it goes to show there was third or fourth in the Super League against clubs spending much more money. But you're right, I thought that was the start of something really big for the city, but it's gone the other way, hasn't it? So fingers crossed we keep the faith, but it's very, very sobering and saddening to see what is going on.
Well, if there's one club that's been there before, it's Salford. It's come back before, so as you say, fingers crossed they can do it again. We'll move on to St Helens. Interesting St Helens. I think if we were having this conversation 3 weeks ago, the amount of pressure that Paul Wellens was under, not just because of results, but because of the performances and the way they'd looked in attack and the way that they just weren't performing with ball in hand, it'd be a very, very different conversation. Look, I'm not saying that all is well again. They're totally wicked after a couple of good results, but the signs in recent weeks are that they're starting to turn a corner. Yes,
fully agree. Big win against the Catalans Dragons at home a couple of weeks ago, and that was the reason the club parted ways with Steve Mack. They backed it up last week with a really big win against Huddersfield Giants. You could argue the opposition wasn't fantastic, but you can only play against what's in front of you, and the manner in which they got both them wins, racking up big scores and conceding very few, is a sign of a team playing with a bit more confidence. They have got a fantastic squad. I think Paul Wellens is a fantastic coach, so this could really be the catalyst. They could really kick on now and give the whole club some confidence, and they could kick on. And with a squad as talented as that, if and when they do make the playoffs, there's no reason why they can't do something in them playoffs. So we could be having a very different conversation in the next couple of months. Really interesting game they've got this week is Hull KR. The week before Hull KR play the Challenge Cup final. Saints will want to keep the winning run going, and Hull KR will obviously want to go into that final with a win, but I'm not sure what their policy is with the players, whether they're going to rest players or not, but it's going to be a really interesting game.
Just quickly, last point on Saints. They had their week off over the Challenge Cup semi-finals. We're not in that camp, we don't know what went on, but it does feel like at the back of that, they've kind of got this positional jigsaw that they've been trying to work out right. That kind of axis of Wellesby, Lomax, Saylor, but the real positive thing that's come out of the last probably 6 weeks, 2 months is the emergence of George Whitby.
Fantastic young talent, look, Saints have been very dominant for a number of years. They have dropped off the last couple of years, but I mentioned just how packed the squad is of talented players. So, given an opportunity, given a playoff spot, that you could see Saints. They have got the experience as well by playing in these big games, big finals. So there's no reason why they can't go all the way. It'd be really interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks.
On to another one of your former clubs, Warrington, and again, the league form hasn't been good enough. The club, Sam Burgess, the players will be quick enough to put their hands up and admit that. I don't think they're hiding away from that. But maybe they didn't get recruitment in key positions right in the off-season. I think they've addressed that with signing a Mark Sneed. But again, injuries just seem to have kind of scuppered any momentum that they've been able to build at any point. Good all change in 10 days.
Yeah, just like Huddersfield Giants, there's not a great deal you can do about injuries, and they have had a horrendous injury list, but you're right. If Warrington go down to London, get the win, all's forgiven. You forget about your Super League form. You've got your hands on a trophy. So I think Warrington are going to go down, and they've nothing to lose. They're going to go down for, in these finals. Normally Warrington are probably the favourites. They're going to be the underdogs, which is great. No pressure on them. If George Williams and Mark Sneed make themselves available for that final, any team with them two players in are going to be more than a match for anyone, really. So they're going to go down confident, and it'll be an interesting final.
We'll talk about some of Sam's selection conundrums this week in a bit. We'll just move on quickly. Talk about Wakefield, who I think have been a brilliant addition back in the Betfred Super League. An entirely different club to the one that was relegated 2 seasons ago. Daryl Powell, we saw what he did with the style of football at Cass. I think he's done similar at Wakefield. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, great to watch, and it's just I still can't get my head round everywhere. Daryl Powell's gone. He's had success. Didn't get it at Warrington for one reason or another, but he's working his magic there at Wakefield. Great, they've got a revamped stadium. They're selling out these home games. Great that they're doing well on the pitch, scoring some fantastic tries, fantastic wins. Really attractive rugby league. So I'm delighted for Daryl. I'm delighted for Wakefield. They've not just come up, which teams normally do, just make the numbers up. They've come up and really made an impact in the Super League, which is great.
And they've got one of my favourite new additions to the Super League this season, Ikai Fartili, the big middle. I know you'll be a fan. The mullet, the way that he plays, the way he just will run from deep and take people on. You need cult figures, you need entertainers. He's certainly one of them.
Yeah, no, he's certainly one of them, and I do like watching him, and it's been great in recent weeks, as the full team have. And I want to mention Mike McMeekin as well. I think he's led the team fantastically well. I think they're going about the business, and before the season, no one gave him a great deal of hope, but they've really have overachieved, and they'll be hoping to go even higher. They've got a tough, tricky away game at Leeds, but the way the team are going, I could see him getting a win there.
Finishing off fittingly with the reigning champions, the Wigan Warriors. You mentioned a slightly slower start to the season, 10 wins. Second in the league. They still feel like the team to beat, don't they? And we spoke about Hull KR. It feels like a shootout between those two at the moment. Yeah, no,
definitely. They won virtually everything on offer last year. Even now, they've won the last 7 games straight. So they had a bit of a blip at the start, a couple of losses out of the Challenge Cup when they weren't expected to be. But they've righted all them wrongs now, and them and Hull KR, you're right, are the form teams in Super League. If it was a repeat of last year's grand final, I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Let's just move on to round 13, rattle through this weekend's games. There's some good ones in there. We talk about Leigh looking to try and arrest a little bit of bad form. They'll go to Huddersfield Giants, and with the greatest respect to Huddersfield, when you look at the form books, when you look at the table, this is a game that perhaps Adrian will fancy to turn that around. Yeah,
definitely. They've had a couple of indifferent results the last few weeks, so there's nothing like a good win before a rest for a Challenge Cup or an international weekend. Great to get the win, and then you can give your boys a bit of time off and really freshen up for the following fixture. But yeah, I think they'll go there confident, and I do think they'll get the win.
Into Friday, Hull KR, St Helens. Interesting one this, because at St Helens we've spoken about the way to turn things around, and there is always that thing, isn't there, the week before a cup final. What does a coach do? Does he try and keep people sharp at playing them? Does he wrap his players in bubble wrap? Will they have one eye on the next week? It's a very different dynamic to if this game was played at any other time of the year.
Yeah, I think he'll go around the players, Willie Peters, and if anyone's got any minor knock or any slight doubt, they'll get rested. Otherwise, he'll go with a full strength squad. I think it's important to get the momentum going. Keep the momentum going into these major finals. So this is the most juiciest tie of the round, I think. I can't wait for this one. So as we've mentioned, Saints, bit of a resurgence there, and they'll go over there and give it their all. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Prediction?
I think Hull KR, I think it'll be really close, but I just think Hull KR, the way they've been going at home in particular, has been fantastic. I think Hull KR will be a tight one. I think Hull KR by 4.
Salford versus Wigan, as much as we'd love it to not be, it feels like a foregone conclusion, doesn't it?
It does. Unfortunately, that there's no dressing it up. Last couple of years you could have said, "Oh, Salford, they'll give Wigan a game," which they have done. They won't give them a game this time, unfortunately.
Warrington host Castleford, tricky one for Warrington in the same way that we've spoken about LKR, and I do think Sam Burgess has probably got more decisions to make than Willie Peters. The Mark Sneed one, surely he just wraps Mark Sneed up and keeps him away from this game, still carrying that face injury.
You think so, wouldn't you? And you've mentioned, Sam's not got the luxury of Willie Peters in terms of as many fit bodies. But yeah, I'd save Mark Sneed for the final. But it's down to Sam whether he feels he needs a bit of game time or a bit of I don't really know, but it's that's up to Sam to decide. But I do think that they still will get the win. I just think the boys they put out, regardless of regulars or I think they'll forget all about the Challenge Cup final. I think they'll focus on the 2 points, and I think Castleford won't be up to the mark, and I think Warrington will get the win.
I think this next one is the game of the round for me. Leeds versus Wakefield. We've just spoken about both of those clubs. This is a fascinating game. I can't call this.
No, it looks fantastic, and both form teams of Super League. I know I mentioned before all the local teams in and around West Yorkshire always seem to love going to Headingley and getting up for the games, and Wakefield have been no different. But I think the Rhinos have got this. I just think home advantage. I think they will be confident. The last few weeks they have really gone about the business and got the 2 points, got the job done. So I think they'll be doing the same, but it'll be a close one.
Rounding off the weekend, Catalans looking to stop the rot. They are at home against Hull FC. Hull FC improves to a little bit of question about consistency. I'd still make them favourites.
The Dragons, you think?
Hull FC.
Hull FC. Yeah, I think so. I just think that with the turmoil at the club, the Dragons, last week was. I don't think they could get much lower than losing your coach that week and then having 40 odd put on you by Wigan and not scoring a point. So I think confidence will be low, and I think Hull had a good win last week, so they'll be. Confidence will be high, and I think Hull will go over there and get the win, and I think they'll win quite convincingly, really.
Well, Moz, pleasure as ever to have you with us. Just very quickly before we do go, State of Origin this morning. The Aussies are coming over. I thought it really whet the appetite. What did you make of it?
I loved it. Yeah, it was. It's so exciting, just watching the build-up and the games, what it means to them boys, and that was one thing I was extremely jealous of. Growing up, I knew I never would get a chance to play in that zone, in that intensity. But the first thing I did when I got there, the first year in Sydney.